This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I'm your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing. Muzzle velocity. Man, a lot of things happen in news. And when you're under an administration, a presidential administration, whose part of their mission is to disrupt everything at the same time to keep the opposition disoriented, things don't always make their way to the air like you'd like. And fortunately, one of the things that Q and I intended, we earmarked this so we could talk about it. We didn't quite get to it in time, but it started making its rounds on social media again, was Donald Trump talking about Gaza and the U.S. taking possession of Gaza. So I'll share the audio with you. This is from February, probably mid-February sometime. But I'll share the audio with you, and then we'll go from there.
And today you just said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it.
And Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority.
Okay, so that, of course, is your Commander-in-Chief. President Donald J. Trump. And that is particularly frustrating. I know the election is over. It's been over for a long time. I know that, looking backwards isn't really the strategy that Democrats need, people that have progressive, liberal, way of thinking need right now. We need to deal with the reality of our situation and focus on the future. But I'm going to argue that by bringing this up, we can indeed prepare for a future. So I'll go first to Q. Obviously, you follow up, but I got something here. I think that there's a lesson that we can learn about the lesser of two evils narrative that is often present every 4 years in our national discourse, where there are a lot of people that don't love fully either candidate and will simply vote based on, hey, look, this person is going to be less harmful to my way of life than this person, right? And that's a mentality that I think is often found either in the middle or on the left. I haven't really found that on the right. The right, the people that are really strongly Republican, they are Republican for a different set of reasons. And as long as those boxes are checked, those particular boxes are checked, they are going to vote no matter what, right? They are going to be reliably Republican. I often say that their votes are fear-based, of them losing something often to, black and brown people, or black and brown people getting too much and then them being afraid of the consequences of that. Q often pushes back and says it's not fear, it's racism. And I think that there is a lot of truth there too. But I also recognize that a lot of them, we lose them if we introduce the word racism, because a lot of white people don't like thinking of themselves as racist because it is inconsistent with what they know to be racism. They think that racism is just using the N-word, and they don't think of it as voting for oppressive policies that further marginalize, subjugate, and oppress, vulnerable communities. Now, the reason that I think that we could learn from this, and not just people who are progressive, not just people who are center, people on the right. I think we all could learn from this lesser of two evils. Because to be fair, there are some people who are people all across the political spectrum that ultimately have to come to terms with this at some point in their life, the lesser of two evils. I want to single out a group that I have come to know and come to love in recent months. I would not profess to, say that I've known and grown up with this community. That's really, a year, or a little bit more than a year, but, you can measure it in months comfortably. And that is people whose politics align with the interests of a free Palestine. Okay? A free Gaza. Because I happen to know a good number of people who have that way of thinking, that mentality. A lot of them just simply didn't vote. They looked at Joe Biden and by extension Kamala Harris, and they said they're actively committing a genocide. And I cannot vote for anyone who's actively committing a genocide. And naturally, I could not vote for Donald Trump because he said it's going to be worse. And therefore, I simply won't vote. And, a lot of us pushed back against that. We said, listen, if it's bad now, it can get worse. It could also get better, but only one of these is better potentially and not worse. You know what I mean? The other one doesn't get better and will only get worse, right? And I think that in hindsight is always 2020. And I mean no offense. These are people that I've come to love. I understand and recognize their plight, but I think that there was a lot of arrogance in that decision to withhold your vote. I think that there was a lot of naivety in that decision. I think that there was a lot of, maybe delusion, maybe the thought that this is a powerful move in terms of shaping outcomes in Gaza, shaping outcomes in my own life or my community's life. And I think that line of thinking is on full display when I listen to Donald Trump say that the U.S., by the U.S.'s own authority, is going to take Gaza. We're just going to have it, and we're going to cherish it. And it's war-torn, and it's not worth money. We're not going to buy it. We're going to have it. Now, for me, it is inconceivable that a Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris would have even thought something like that, much less said it. Donald Trump, however, is really helping push the Israeli agenda just by talking like this, where it goes from a genocide to a Holocaust, the complete erasure of a people, their institutions, their schools, their history, and then their land. It now belongs to the U.S. Now, again, I know that this was something that was stated a couple months ago, but now's our time to respond to it because it's, again, making those rounds in the news. And I think that one of the things that I want people to remember is that elections have consequences. If you vote this way, you have consequences. If you vote that way, you have consequences. And now clearly we see that if you don't vote, there are consequences. The lesser of two evils can indeed take center stage and shape the outcomes over the issue that you didn't want to further argue with the people on this side with. They're not giving you what you want, so you're not going to vote for anybody. Listen, nobody gets everything that they want. Nobody gets that. And again, I just think that the lesson that we need to learn here is not to be as naive as we were this time, going into midterms, going into, the next election cycle and, elections for the rest of our lives, that it can always be worse than what you imagine, as illustrated by Donald Trump saying that out of his own mouth. We're going to have Gaza. We're not going to need to buy it. What? Was that on anybody's 2025 bingo card? Was that on your bingo card when you were saying, I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris? Because you didn't anticipate what worse would look like? Well, now that we know, we can learn from it. And I think that we should. So I know that this is something that we're going to go back and forth with. Not because we disagree, but I know that you have some thoughts here too, Q. So, please share.
You use the word arrogant. I'm going to use, and you also use the word naive, which I don't subscribe to.
Okay.
There was just no space for it. You can't claim to be naive when one side is saying this is what I want to do and the other side is saying this is what I want to do, and they're not the same.
Yeah.
They're both saying they're going to do the same thing. Then I can understand you just putting your hands up and saying, look, man, I can't participate in this.
Yeah.
But one guy was the president, and his subservient vice president does not then have a choice to make her own decisions. She doesn't have autonomy over our military and the decisions that we make as the vice president. The president does. In our two-party binary zero-sum election cycle, where one side is going to be the president, no matter what, whether you decide to sit out or not, one of these two people is going to win. One of them is saying, I want to cease fire. These people deserve their home. They deserve their autonomy. They deserve self-determination. So do their children. They deserve their life. They deserve to have prosperity. And the other side is saying, I hope Netanyahu finishes the job.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? That's not naivete. That's self-righteousness. I'm without flaw. Neither one of these candidates are without flaw. So I'm just not going to participate. There was an active president who I wholeheartedly disagreed with what he was doing and the position that he took and the position that he stood on. While he was doing that, his vice president was campaigning to be the next president after him. And she'd already expressed differences in opinions and ideas and policy that she wanted to put forward were she to be elected. The other guy, again, made it very, very plain where he stood. And those that decided not to participate said to him, we'd rather have you do what you said you're going to do than give this other person a chance to do something that would be in our own best interest. Because it's easier for us in our moral position right now to just disqualify her when we know for certain every possible outcome will be worse with you.
Yeah.
And this is just another example, again, of the auto benefit of the doubt that white men get that a black woman never could have. Because we've heard all the reasons why she didn't win: messaging, strategy, whatever. She was a woman. We can kind of start and stop there, but she was a black woman, which made it even less likely. Because talking about qualifications, by far the most qualified candidate we've ever had, man or woman, Democrat or Republican. So he is who we thought he was. At every turn, every decision we said he'd make, every decision he said he'd make. And a lot of people really let us down and allowed this to happen to all of us again. Speaking about the people in Gaza like they're worthless and don't exist. Their homeland, their sovereign homeland, by the authority of me, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
By the authority of me, I will take it. Because who's going to stop me? The world, his constituents, his colleagues have all shown that they'll watch and do nothing as he does whatever he wants. And we knew those were his intentions. He said it and we said it. And it is incredibly frustrating to know that we're here now because so many people just decided from a very, very privileged position.
Yeah, man, that's the part
that I won't even participate. Sorry, guys. I know you showed up for us, but we won't show up for you.
That's the thing that's I think frustrating is really the right word to use here. And the truth is, I don't want to pick on Palestinian people because it's not Palestinian people per se. There are a lot of activists, black, white, whatever, that said we're staying home. A lot of people were politically engaged. A lot of people that felt morally like they could not cast a vote, that were not Palestinian, that were not Middle Eastern, that were not Muslim, right? So I don't want it to seem like I'm picking on one group. It's really that mentality that I'm talking about. And I don't want to pick on the issue of Palestine as the only issue. I think rather the point that I'd like to make is that not voting accomplishes nothing. That I'm going to withhold my vote in protest accomplishes nothing. It accomplishes nothing. And we collectively as a society have seen what that means, how that looks. No one's looking back and be like, wow, poor Palestine. Nope. Because the narrative that is getting chronicled actively in this country is the words coming out of that man's mouth. President Donald J. Trump again. Okay, so that's the story. It's not written in the history books. Nope. What he says is the history of this country. And unfortunately, intentionally or unintentionally, we put him in that position to do that again. Right? But it's not just that. It's not voting is not a good strategy ever. Dr. Umar is a perfect example. Dr. Umar said that black people should not vote for Kamala Harris. We should not vote. I forgot what he said. He was saying something that
don't vote until you get something.
That's what he said. I didn't want to say it, but
so then how
and get him wrong.
But
I think that's what he said.
Get something part if we're not participating, sir, doctor, sir.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And that, I think you said it best. I think, in fact, you said this before. It might have been on one of our shows, or it might have been in person when we were doing like a live event somewhere in the country. But what you said, it makes sense. And if you think about it, you vote for the person who's making the promises that get you closest to where you feel like they are representing your interests or furthering your agenda, whatever the case is, right? And after you voted and elected them and they are doing the job, then you hold them accountable. Then you demand to get something, right? You don't do that up front.
Or don't vote and let the person who's actively campaigning on making your life worse win, and then show us all the negotiating power that you have now.
That you said it better than I was trying to say that, and you said it better. So listen, I know that there are people who are passionate who are going to disagree with me and disagree with you. And, sometimes I say this because I have to, but now I really mean it. I'd really like to hear from the people who disagree. And I'm not to push back, not to say that you're wrong, because I recognize that you might be morally in a position and indeed are able to articulate that feeling in such a way that I cannot know, right? I cannot know your position. I cannot know how you feel. But this logic that I have, that Q and I, we look at this like this is great. This doesn't make any sense. This logic, I think, needs to be fundamental. It needs to be foundational for people who want to live in a freer world for all people. And I think that if this logic, or if the alternative, this I'm not going to vote until I get something, took root on the right, then we would have a fundamental shift in how our politics works. But since we were the one that played that card for whatever reason, we are witnessing a fundamental shift in the way our politics works, and it is ultimately to our detriment. And if somebody can make that make sense for me, if somebody can tell me what's the net benefit of what happened, beyond like, look, I just couldn't do it, because that I think is a little thin, but what was the benefit? What did we learn? What did we gain? And then, of course, in the context of that, explain how you feel and why you got there. I think that'd be well received, and I'd love to have that conversation. Whoever you are, we were not only opening up the red microphone talkback feature, but the show, the floor. We would like to, let's get on a call. We'll put you on Zoom. We'll talk. But this cannot be a viable strategy moving forward. And my hope is that we've learned our lesson. So, you got anything else, Q?
No, sir.
All right, then we'll leave it right here. As I mentioned, you got the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app, or you can yell at me in the DMs. You can find me on all social media at Ramses Ja.
I am Q Ward on all social media as well.
And I promise I meant it. Let's talk about it, okay? Until we do.
Peace.
This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.